What is up, everybody? Hunter with Lost Socket Garage. Today's video, we're going to be covering a lot. We're going to be talking about the famous, infamous Mustang II front end. We're going to talk about the history. We're going to talk about why it's been so popular, what companies make it, the kits that we install, and most importantly, we're actually going to be doing an install video on the kit that we use. So buckle up, let's get her done. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about the Mustang II front end conversion for specifically 65 through 70 Ford Mustang. We install a lot of these kits. We are not directly partnered with any of the people that manufacture these kits. We definitely have a preference on the ones that we install, but we'll get into that here in just a little bit. So just to kind of give you a brief history lesson, the Mustang II was made from 1974 to 1978, designed by Lee Iacocca. Man, he got that one wrong. He did a lot of good stuff, but man, that is not a pretty car. But it was right smack dab in the middle of, you know, the fuel crisis, etc. They were building smaller cars, more fuel efficient. It was an incredibly popular car. In '74, it was actually Motor Trend's Car of the Year. They sold like 1.1 million of them. So apparently people just had different taste in cars than me, and that's okay. But one of the biggest things that came from those cars is the front independent suspension on the Mustang II. Now, this one is kind of weird. It's something that just, sorry, I had to readjust my mic. This one's kind of weird. The Mustang II is an incredibly popular swap for not just Ford Mustangs. You know, we've seen them in rat rods, we've seen them in old trucks, seen them in Camaros. There's so many applications for a Mustang II front end, but it really didn't kick off. You know, the independent suspension with rack and pinion, that didn't really kick off until the 70s. And in the late 70s, there was a guy named Chuck Lombardo, and he owned California Street Rods. And he saw the Mustang II front end as an opportunity to be able to start throwing in a lot of these different hot rods as an independent suspension. It was a very, very easy swap. It came with rack and pinion. It's independent front suspension. You could throw big old brakes on it. So it was a natural fitment for a hot rod. Now, moving forward in the very, very late 70s and early 80s, it got a boost in its popularity. And strangely enough, the way that it got a boost was there was a guy named Harry Shea, and he had, I think it was Shea Motor Company, I might be completely wrong on that, but he wanted to repop a 1929 Ford Model A, and Ford signed off on it. They're like, yeah, that's totally fine, but he wanted to add new technology to it, just like we're doing here today. So he added the independent front suspension from a Mustang II to this Model A. Now, originally, they were going to make 10,000 of these Shea cars. They ended up only making 5,000 of them. So some of you out there, if they're planning on 10,000, they only make 5,000. Some may be like, hey, where did all those extra parts go? Fun fact, a lot of suspension companies ended up going in and buying the remaining inventory of Mustang II front end, suspension bits, etc. Companies like Heights, they were one of the first ones to buy a lot of it and then start redesigning that Mustang II front end. So they purchased a lot of that equipment, and they started making their own Mustang II front end kits. Now, they evolved it, the geometry, the layout, a lot of it is still exactly the same to the Mustang II, but they made design changes in it with, you know, for example, tubular A-arms, the gauge of the metal that it's made with, the cradle was redesigned, and over and over and over again over the years, this Mustang II has gone through different generations, and different companies have their different spin on it. So long story short with the history of the Mustang II, it rose in popularity because a dude in a hot rod shop was like, yo, I can put this in a bunch of different hot rods. Then it only escalated from there, and now we're left with the Mustang II front ends that you can buy pretty much anywhere. And they go in anything. Like I said, I've seen them in hot rods, I've seen them in rat rods, I've seen them in classic Ford trucks, classic Chevy trucks, Camaros. Man, they go in just everything. And it's the simplicity of the design and the benefits that it comes with. Rack and pinion is obviously a massive benefit. The stability that the cradle actually adds to the car is, again, a massive benefit. If you ever drive a stock classic Mustang, kind of wobbling all over the place, this really helps stiffen up the front end. And you know, disc brakes are a huge upgrade that you want to take advantage of on these cars. Mustang II, you can put pretty much any size disc brake you want under it, so that's a big pro. Now, everyone under the sun sells these kits. Heights, obviously we mentioned them earlier. You can go on Summit and find, you know, 5, 6 different companies that make independent front suspensions named Mustang II. Now again, a lot of the geometry is the exact same as the Mustang II, but right now a Mustang II front end is more of just a name than anything else. Now, the company that we use, again, we are not partnered with them. We don't get money from it or anything like that, but we use Mustangs to Fear. We use their front ends because we love them. They're incredibly well made. They're very easy to install, and they come with a lot of pros, a lot of upgradable items on it, etc. The main thing that I like about Mustangs to Fear Mustang II is it actually drops the cradle 2 inches, okay? Why is that a big deal? For handling. If you drop your center of gravity on the heaviest part of your car, you drop that center of gravity 2 inches, it's going to change the overall handling of your car. If you don't believe me, go drive a Subaru WRX. That is a flat 4 engine that's like this, sits really low to the ground. The car handles amazing because it's the heaviest part of the car, but a lower center of gravity. Another big plus to this is if you're throwing a massive motor in this car, so if you're doing like a Coyote swap or something like that, you no longer have to cut your trans tunnel or your firewall at all, because again, it's dropping that center of gravity 2 inches. Now, you don't have to have a Coyote to want to do a Mustang II front end. It's a solid performance upgrade. A couple of things about the Mustangs to Fear kit. They can set it up for any motor, pretty much. Anything from a 289 to a 429, Coyote 5.0. They have options for the 4.6, the 5.4, the 5.8. And you just basically tell them what motor's going in the car and they set up your motor mounts for you. So it's very customizable. It's very easy to install. The brakes are optional with it. Now, Mustangs to Fear offers an upgraded Willwood kit. I think it's around $1,200. Don't quote me on that pricing, but that's an upgrade for the Mustang II front end. If you don't need the drilled and slotted rotors and you're not tracking the car, etc., I would say just grab a pair of the Willwood Dynalights for a 74 to 78 Mustang. Remember, this is the fitment of your front suspension is going to change. For example, the car that it's coming out of. So you all that are swapping cars and doing a bunch of crazy mods, keep a list of where your stuff comes from. So you can buy the Dynalights for around $700 off Summit ish, and you're going to have a really nice kit, and we'll show you that here in just a second. The cons, if you guys are running an LS or a 351 Cleveland, they do not have a setup for you. They don't have a setup for an LS because it's probably just not as popular of a swap, even though it should be more popular because the fastest Mustangs are LS powered.
Emotional, damn it!
God, I'm cringing because of the comments right now. Secondly, the 351 Cleveland, the crank actually sits lower, and so it changes the fitment of everything. So actually, it's not going to fit the cradle. They don't have an application if you have a Cleveland. Those are fairly rare. You're not going to run into a lot of Clevelands in this world anyway. So another question we get is, okay, if we're going with a Mustang II from Mustangs to Fear, how do we install it? Well, this video is going to take care of you there too. So let's get into some unboxing of the parts that you're going to get and our install, and then we'll show you the final product. All right, so let's take a look at what's in the box. How'd you like that? That was my Brad Pitt impression. All right, so talk about what comes in the box with this Mustang II kit. Again, this is from Mustangs to Fear. One of the ways that you can really tell a quality product is if it fits right off the bat. And that's something I want to draw attention to with the Mustangs to Fear Mustang II cradle. This cradle, I can legitimately just set it directly between the frame rails and it just sticks up there itself. So Very, very, very good product. It fits amazing. This is everything, handy dandy pointer magnet. Everything that comes in the kit, you have all the hardware that comes with it. You have your sway bar mounts. These pieces actually go on top of your frame rail, kind of like that little number. That's the wrong side, but it goes like, well, yeah, it goes like that. You match those little notches up. We'll go over that in the install. Comes with your power steering, your upper lower control arms, your sway bar, your knuckle. These are the engine panels, okay? Now, this is a kit that obviously you're gonna have to delete your shock towers. And from Mustangs to Fear, you have a couple of different options. This particular install is going to be with just the panel patches. Now, Mustangs to Fear does make full engine panels that kind of give you this grooved look all the way down the engine panel, which is nice. It kind of it makes everything kind of, it pulls it all together essentially. These are just the patches. We already took out the shock towers, so we're just gonna put these patches over. You'll notice here, it gives you a little extra material. Now, this is something that the last set we actually got did not come with this top piece, so that you can fold it over, which is typically to the right of like your VIN number. It goes over the top and meets up with the rest of your engine panels. Last set we got didn't have them, but normally they always come with a little bit of extra material so that you can bend that over and then meet it up with the rest of the panels. So this is everything in the kit. So we're going to start tearing the car apart. It's mostly torn down now, but we're gonna start mocking up our cradle and doing our measurements from there. And we'll show you exactly how we're gonna take those measurements, where we place the cradle, and then where everything else goes. So let's get into the install. All right, we got Derry doing some install stuff here. Derry, what are we looking at?
We are making our measurements for the location of our Mustang II front end for the cradle.
How do we do that?
So what we're gonna do, speed square, gonna make this so much easier. This hole, we're gonna line it up to the very edge of this. Take something thin like an awl or soapstone. You're gonna make your mark right at the edge of this. So you have this, then you're gonna go 14 inches from here. You are going to make another mark.
Magnetic measuring tape. So good.
Make your other mark right at 14. And you have that. You're going to take your speed square again. Line it up. Again, something thin, like soapstone. All the way up. So now you have your mark here. You're going to use an angle grinder or a die grinder with a cutoff wheel and cut a whittled notch in here. The cradle has a notch already cut into it. You're going to use that to line it up.
That notch that Derry is talking about is right here. So you're going to notch the frame rail and then line these two notches up. Now we're going to do this on both sides, and what that's going to do is ensure that we're even on both sides with this placement. Very, very important. Derry, why don't we use markers?
Markers are too thick. You got to remember whether you're on the inside of the marker, the outside of the marker, or the center of the marker. The thinner, the better.
Yep, solid point. So using an awl or soapstone works really, really well as well. So we're going to do this on both sides. Derry, any tips on this part?
For God's sakes, put it in right. Mustang II logo towards the very front of the car.
MTF logo right there. That goes towards the front of the car. Onward.
All right, so we've got our notches notched where we need to be. We're lined up. You always got to double check our measurements just in case, no matter how perfect you think it is. You're going to want to take your tape to your notch. Right at 14. That's where we want to be. Then down here on the cradle, you're going to measure here to your line. Should be right at 12. And if those are your measurements, you know you're good. Both sides.
Now you want to clamp this up because this cradle needs to be level with the rest of the car as well. So clamp this up on both sides, front and back, both sides, before you weld it. But welding it in is not the next step. But the next step here is we're gonna be cutting out this area because we have A-arms that are gonna be in here, and it needs to be flush with the rest of the frame rail. You have a, you know, inch lip-ish right here. So we've kind of marked out roughly where we're gonna cut. There'll probably be a little bit of additional trimming, but that will be, we're gonna keep that until we get the A-arms in. One step that I did forget about that's really the first step, once your car's all kind of like the motor's out and everything like that, is you have to take off the shock towers. The shock towers are held on, you're gonna see like 3 bolts and then a bunch of spot welds. So just take your shock towers out using a spot weld cutter or a drill, and then we're gonna use the panels that are over there to fill in this gap. But next step, after you get your cradle where you want it, we're going to be cutting this out, okay? We're kind of ballparking a measurement, basically to the edge of where your old shock tower is, and then straight across down, because what we want to do is we want to eliminate this lip. The way that we're going to do it is we're going to cut straight across, and then we're actually going to bend this piece in a little bit and then weld it directly to the frame rail. And we'll show you how we do that here in just a second. Okay, so Derry has cut off right here. He's actually hammered this in a little bit, but this is what happens when you cut this little extra piece off. You're left with this right here. The idea here is to make this square so that we can fit the other half of the collar on that bolts to, that basically takes the top of the coilover. So he's hammered this in, but we really want this flush. So just to give you an idea how much that does bend, you're able just to get that with a clamp. Blah. So then we're going to go ahead and tap down the top a little bit and throw a bead all the way along here, seal it up, and then we'll be able to throw the top part of that cradle on it. So we're going to get it welded, get it done. All right, so Derry has this all cut out and welded. So essentially what we did is cut off where these 2 tabs meet, straight across, okay? Then you're gonna be left with a gap right here. You hammer this side of the frame rail in, and then clamp the top side of the frame rail down, and then you're just gonna make a square out of this. Because what we're gonna do next is we are going to throw the cradle back in, and then we're gonna throw these on top. So let's cut to us putting the cradle in. Okay, so we used a couple of screw jacks and we lifted the cradle up in. Fits wonderfully. Then we put the top half of the collar. This is going to hold the top half of the coilover. But both pieces are notched, and you just want to make sure that those notches are lined up. We also actually measured the notch on the top part of the collar 14 inches back as well, just to make sure that those notches were accurate. They were accurate, so everything's lined up. Give you guys a quick hack or a tip or something to buy. Dude, we got these at Harbor Freight, all these clamps, and it took me so long to realize that there is a 1/4 inch notch out of this, so you can actually put a socket in it and crank it down tighter. So go pick these up. So next step is we are going to start laying down some beads and welding this in. We're going to weld this in all the way around, but we shall cut to see how it turns out. All right, so cradle is welded in. Double, triple check your measurements. Once we welded it in, we threw some primer over it. But she's in solid. Now it's to putting everything actually together. Derry, what you doing, bud?
Putting the knuckle on the control arms.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So we got the upper and lower control arms going in. Knuckles going in. Now they're different size spacers, correct, Derry?
Yeah, bottom one has a thicker spacer, top one has a thinner one. Spacer goes on after the knuckle, and then your casting bit.
And then your cotter. Boop. Can you find the hole?
Apparently not.
That's what she said.
Okay, So then this goes up. Now keep in mind, guys, you're not going to be tightening your suspension down until you actually have a motor and trans in. This all needs to be set on the ground and have a full drivetrain in it, everything in it, before you tighten all of this stuff down. So here's where we're at. The upper control arms, just to show you guys how this is set up. Derry, 3 washers, right?
Got one between the head of the bolt, control arm, one between the control arm and the bracket, and another one between the nut and the bracket.
And that third washer is just in there. Now we're not gonna, again, we're not gonna tighten all this down. We're just gonna kind of snug it up until we get the rest of this set up. All right, so this is put together. I have an engine panel sitting in there, but we'll get to that here in just a second. Everything's together. Derry, what's next? Coilover, right?
Yeah, coilover. So the way we're going to do this is we have a shorter bolt and a longer bolt. The longer bolt goes on top. You need a washer on the outside. Then you have these 2 spacers that go on either side of the little ball joint in the shock. So what we're going to do, I like to put this through just to hold it so I can grab my spacers. Then one spacer on that side, through. Then once you have enough room on this side, now take your other spacer,
drop it on floor. This is what video editing software is for.
And you repeat this process 2 to 3 times till you get the spacer. You have another washer, and you're done.
And then it's coilover. It's going to come down here and attach bottom A-arm. No spacers in this one.
Nope, you just have your washers, which I like to put the washer against here, because if you just put it right on the bolt, you're going to hit the lower control arm and it's not going to go through all the way.
Solid tip. That's what she said.
And your other spacer on the other side, followed by your nut.
Now these coilovers, QA1s, really nice coilovers. Fully adjustable. See Derry adjusting some stuff right here. So those are your primary adjustments for your QA1. These are adjustable as far as height is concerned as well. So once you've done this on both sides, and it looks like this, you're going to start putting up your engine panels. Now, the engine panels, if you remember from earlier in the video, they had that longer part on top. Derry's gone ahead and cut that off because what that piece normally fills into is basically right here. But we just cut the shock tower off and this piece is just fine, so we didn't need the extra that was actually on the top of this. So now we're just going to set this in. You can weld it on the inside, you can weld it on the outside. You have some options here. But when I say that there's a little bit more cutting sometimes that's needed, this is what I'm talking about. On this one, it's actually not bad at all. We're probably not going to have to cut it. But you want to make sure that your clearance on your upper, well, just your upper A-arm is just fine with this engine panel. That'll help you kind of place it. But basically, you're just going to put this exactly where you took off the shock tower from, all of those spot welds. So this is set up. We're going to weld these in, and then next we're going to move on to power steering, right?
Yep.
All welded in. Clearances look good. Next, we're going to be moving on to the power steering. First thing, though, I want to cover is the sway bar bracket. Forgot to show you guys this before we were installing it. Normally, this basically just butts up right against these forward supports. Now, Mustangs to Fear does make a what they call a jack pad that replaces this with like 2x4 or 1x4 square tubing that goes forward. It's really good for a jack pad. Has a little tow hook on it and stuff, or dyno connection on it. But for the sway bar, it basically butts up against your stock mounts right there, and we're looking at 4.5 inches from the cradle. So you just measure from the cradle forward 4.5 inches, and that's going to be your outside edge for the sway bar mount. Now we're going to actually put on the power steering before we put on the sway bar, just because we want all of this room open for us, and our power steering is going to go right here. But before we mount the power steering, Terry, what you doing?
We got to cut the inner tie rods on the power steering.
Okay, so we're cutting tie rods. Manual says what? An inch? Inch. Okay. Now, one of the things that you want to do here is you'll see that Derry still has the nut on there. When you cut threaded, you know, all thread or whatnot, keep a nut on it, because then you can just unscrew this nut and it kind of rethreads everything, because you're going to have some burrs and stuff like that sticking off from when you cut this. So just make sure you keep this nut further down, and then we're just going to lop this off, clean it up a little bit. So after cutting the inch off of each end, then we just mount it up. Takes a couple of long bolts here, nut washer here, nut washer, same thing. Then on this end, you're going to tie in the tie rods. Try to get this straight. You're going to have to get in alignment after this, guaranteed, but just kind of best effort. Get your spindle as straight and parallel with the car as possible, and then you're going to twist your tie rod on, and then this is just a castle nut with a cotter pin, and then this is your basically lock nut to keep it in place. But again, you're gonna have to get an alignment after this. Next step is going to be our sway bar, which honestly is super easy. We're going to use this sway bar that came with the kit. It comes with the mounts, and then you just throw 2 bolts in on each side. So we're going to do that real quick and show you the final product. Okay, just a quick note when installing this sway bar, bring a friend. This is always really difficult to get this bolt all the way through and then finally get this nut on. So this is the correct order. So you go bolt through the bottom, you go washer, bushing, bushing, washer, brass sleeve, washer, bushing, bushing, washer, nut. But you want to make sure, let out your coilover. So spin this, locking nut all the way down. So this is all loose and it's easy to compress this up. Like I said, bring a friend. Also another note on these bushings. You'll see that they actually are different from side to side. So make sure that this piece is actually the piece that is setting down into the mounting surface. So we're gonna tighten this down a little bit. Again, we're not tightening everything down final until there's a motor and trans in this, which we will not be putting in, but that is how you attach the sway bar. And we are all done setting up the Mustang II. We went ahead and threw on the Willwood brakes. This is a basic Dynalite kit. This is a very straightforward install. That's why I didn't really cover it in the video. If you guys want a brake install video, happy to do one, but it's basically packing some grease and bolting stuff on. This is the finished product of the Mustang II. Obviously, we do have motor mounts. They're just right there. This is the setup, sway bar, brakes. Hell yeah. All right. That's our video on installing the Mustang II front end on our 66 Mustang. We're also going to be doing a 4-link suspension on this. We can do a 4-link install video if you guys want. Like and comment below if you want to see a 4-link installation, and then we can do that for you guys. Really love this setup. Keep in mind, again, you can set it up for small block, big block, Coyote. It's just a great system. Mustangs to Fear makes an amazing one. That's the one that we use. We're not sponsored by them or anything like that. There are other Mustang II kits out there, but there are some major advantages to this kit that I talked about a little bit earlier in the video. So if you guys have any other questions, you know, liking, subscribing, all that stuff super helps the channel. We love to bring you more and more content. We're going to have an episode of Car Builder's Corner coming up that you're going to want to see, because there's a crazy Miata that's going to be involved in it. We got a lot of other stuff coming down the pike, so like, subscribe. Thank you to all of our subscribers out there. Hit us up for your coupe to fastback conversions. And until next time, don't be a dick. Do what you love. And as always, never be tamed. Peace.